top of his head. Come and listen to the words that he said. If you wasn't sure, well now you will know. This will be one of your favorite shows.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Haas Talks. Joining me, Bobby Milliser, Janky Bobby, Milsner, Millhouse. There's probably been several names. Bobby, thanks for taking time out of your day to sit down and chat with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Hoss. It's good to see you here in the Bob's Turn 5.
It's pretty nice, right?
Love this place.
So, Bobby, 2021, it's been kind of a wild year for you professionally.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's just dive right into, how you got started in, crewing, being a crew guy. How did racing get started for Janky Bobby?
Well, I was at Port City. I guess I was 2 weeks old. It was the first time I've ever been here. So my family's been coming for years.
Your mom worked as a scorer, right?
Yeah, so back when Carbone's owned it, my mom was the early pit reporter, right? So she did they had a write-up that they would do weekly and put a column for her in there. So we've always been involved in, racing here. And I was, like I said, 2 weeks old first time they had me here, but Dad was always the crew guy. So, they owned a car early on that his brother drove, which he actually got into an accident and kind of got burns. And Dad kind of stepped away for a little while and then ended up teaming up with John Pickle, who obviously owned Port City as well.
That's cool.
Then had Lightning and Leon Bacon driving for him. So that's how I met Brady. And so our families traveled up and down, and he ran for the Inema Championship, won it 1 year, and Dad was the crew chief on that. So my first official crew chief job was on the side of one of Dad's cars.
Oh, that's cool.
Even though I was just, playing in the mud and putting little tracks in the dirt and whatever. But, that's how I got started.
So through the years, you've been involved in micro racing, you've done midget racing and everything else. But what is it about midgets that just, give Janky Bobby that warm, fuzzy feeling?
Well, obviously the Chili Bowl being here helps. That was the first midget race I ever saw was the Chili Bowl. But I was kind of following in Dad's footsteps of working on micros. And at the time he was working with Kevin Bayer. And I just kind of started hanging around, pushing brooms and doing tires. And talking to Dad, it was like he'd won all the races he wanted to go win, nationally and back when they had nationals. And, him and Kevin won 4 or 5 in a row during a speed week. So he was kind of getting towards the end of, spinning a wrench. And it's like, man, he's done all the micro stuff, right? So what's there for me to accomplish that he hasn't already accomplished? And that's when Eric Fenton approached Kevin about driving his Ecotech midget. And it's like, man, this thing is cool. It wasn't really, it wasn't a Chili Bowl midget, but it was a good way for me to get my feet wet. I didn't know anything about them, pushing off was a struggle. But that was kind of my transition from micros to midgets.
Right. So that's where you really got your start in the midget deal, was with Eric. That was, man, it seems like so long ago.
I know. I talked with Dalby recently. I was like, dude, I've been working on midgets for a long time.
Yeah. So you worked with Eric for quite a few years. I remember that, traveling up and down the road with Power Eye and you guys.
Which that was even before Power Eye was around.
Yeah.
They had the OMRA series.
Yeah.
So it was cool. He pushed real hard because he had so many midgets that he was like, man, we need a race. We need a race here.
Right.
And he's been a big advocate for Oklahoma midget racing, obviously, for a while. But we ran up and down the road, a lot of I-44 trips. But that's when Power Eye came down and teamed up, and now they've grown this into their huge, 20-25 race schedule.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal to see how big it's grown in the last 5-6 years-ish with Power Eye West. For you, being outside the car, you've never driven a car before, and it's just, what's the difference? Have you ever wanted to drive a car? Has there ever been that want for that, or has it always been like, man, turning wrenches is my thing. It's like in my blood.
When I was real little, Brady was running quarter midgets. I got to make a couple laps in it, and my mom always teased me, but she was like, you're more interested in the girls that were in the grandstands than racing. So I don't know. I just hitting your mark lap after lap like that, it just kind of seemed repetitive to me. I've never been a big like do the same thing over and over and over and over.
Right.
Like I respect obviously drivers and what they do. It's just for me, it's more fun, reading the dirt and watching a car and being able to tell what it's doing more so than what the driver's making it do.
So being on the wrenching side of things, is there do you enjoy working with the more veteran drivers, or do you enjoy getting the opportunity to work with some of the younger talent that we see coming up through the ranks?
For me, honestly, it's a bit of both. You always enjoy working with the more seasoned guys. Like I've got to work with a few NASCAR guys. Briscoe was in Flea's car one year that I was working on it, and Allgaier, and to hear all these different perspectives, and then to get to work with like young talent. Like I was fortunate enough to have Grady Chandler drive for Eric Fenton and crew chief on his, and we joked all the time, like, I'm signed in as your legal guardian to more places than your parents are. So it's fun for me to work with, young talent, because it's always fun for me to see the progression, now that junior sprints are so big and restricted. I mean, it kind of sucks to think about, but like I'm getting old enough now where I've seen a few crops come through, and guys like Sean Mahaffey and obviously Jeffrey's been here for a long time, but he's kind of progressed into wanting to do more midget stuff, but the generation gap is fun for me. Like to work with young talent is just to work on the communication skills, to work on because you're so used to working with dad, and
right.
Dad, me and Dad got our own way of
Lingo,
talking. Well, we got to figure something else out. Because you take away somebody that's worked with some person for, call it their entire life,
right.
12, 13, 15 years. That's a lot of time to develop a relationship and chemistry and your own lingo, really, because everybody talks different. I mean, I'm from Oklahoma, but getting up there to Indiana and all those places, like everybody kind of has a different way of maybe saying the same thing. It's just how you break down the communication and really what that means. Like, how tight is your tight, right? So that's the joy for me.
Where that all comes into play. So you kind of made mention of Flea, and you've gotten to work with Flea, and you've worked with a lot of different teams over the last, 2 or 3 years-ish?
Yeah, I feel like the freelance deal has really kind of been my spot, I guess, for the past few years. I parted ways with Fenton probably 2015, 2016. But right before that, I got to work with Jason McDougall for the first time. We took one of his cars up to the Loeffler. And so as soon as that ended, that was the transition of Port getting purchased out, and they closed that down. So I was kind of not really doing any midget stuff, not really doing anything because Port was shut down, and talked to Jason a little bit, and we put a car together, just kind of pieced it together, and ended up going out and running. I think we won 24 shows that year, between Sweet Springs and Creek and, down in Texas and all those places that I think it was now 600 maybe.
Yeah.
But just to see that schedule, like how far micros had come since when I was a little bit younger, not a whole lot, but, I'd been racing midgets kind of focused for a few years, and I was like, man, the micro deals really stepped up. Like, me and Jason had to get to work on that car to make it better, and then that following years when he rolled it out and won 3 drillers. But just to see that the micro game had really picked up. A lot of the components are starting to swap over between chassis. A lot of the California versus Oklahoma stuff had kind of died down. Obviously, with all the technologies improved in shock technology and data acquisition and stuff like that, it really has stepped up. So the micro game now is tough. I feel like they obviously race quite a bit, but they've got some big paying shows that kind of get your attention. I think that's why we see guys like Keith put together a micro team, and really he could hire somebody and go race for some genuine real money.
Right. So this year alone, so you're a machinist by trade, like machinist.
Yeah.
This year you kind of you changed paths a little bit. What caused that for you? Was that just like a time where you're like professionally you feel like it was time for a change, that you had the opportunities to kind of pursue the freelance deal, as you call it, the freelance crew chief guy, crew guy, car guy, whatever you want to call yourself?
Yeah.
Let's call you a wrench man. You come with your own flathead screwdriver and a 9/16 wrench or something
that's
like
pretty
that.
much all you need to work on midget these days. Maybe a 5/32 Allen wrench if I'm
Yeah.
trying to jack some front end weight. But no, earlier this year I made the decision to part ways with the machine shop. I was kind of running their operation on the machine shop side. It's a lot of stress to go try to run a business for someone and then try to race on the weekend and be competitive. And when you look at a lot of the teams that win a lot, everyone's complaining about, oh, they've got more people or they've got more money or whatever. They've just got more time. It takes time to be prepared and be organized and all the things that you need to be successful. So I realized that it was harder to work full time and then try to go compete against them than if I just spent more of my time focused on getting faster in the shop, doing my research, doing my homework, keeping my notebook polished up, not just kind of I'll write those down,
right.
Whenever I get back to it. Well, if you don't do it when you're fresh or keep an electronic book or whatever, it's pretty easy to go through a whole weekend and kind of get blurry on, how much stagger do we have here? So being able to focus more on that, hone that craft, and go back and watch film and do all the things all the tools that streaming services have provided us now. You can go back and watch an entire event, and it's a lot of information.
Yeah.
Especially when, as someone that's never driven, all I rely on is what the car looks like.
Right.
The attitude, which obviously the driver input's important, but when you start talking about working with so many different drivers, it's really hard to find a good balance for everybody. Mm-hmm. No two drivers drive the same, no two cars react the same. Even if you got brand A and brand A right next to each other, this one might like softer bars. It's really tough to get everyone dialed in on the same package, and that's what makes it so interesting. You don't have, here's one playbook, this works everywhere, here you go.
Here's the build book of all build books.
Yeah.
They're all different.
There's not exactly one frame out there. There's not one package out there. Everybody's got their window of opportunity. And that's what's exciting for me is finding the window for any particular setup, any driver combination, getting that all to mesh well, which is tough. Last weekend I went to Angel Park and kind of got my ass kicked. But trying to take a package that you're unfamiliar with and make everything gel in one night is really tough.
Right.
So that's where I think a lot of the bigger teams succeed because they're working with the same individual. They've got the same equipment basically every night, and they're polishing on it. And it's just a unique perspective. I think, I don't see a lot of people get opportunities to kind of work with that many different drivers in a season. Like last year or the year before, it was 10, 12, 13 different drivers in one season. It's a lot of information. Yeah. It's a lot of different perspectives on your setup. Say you take your setup from one track to the other or one person to the other. You may not do the exact same things, but you're still going to operate the same way.
Right. This year's kind of been about the same as you've worked for several different teams. You've had some success this year though.
Yeah. So
some really solid stuff with Carbone and Kyle Jones.
Yeah.
What is it? 3 wins now?
They've got
wins?
2. They should have had 3. Man, he knocked the fence down I-44. But it's just a testament to how much of a team sport racing really is. You can't just show up and think you're gonna be a one-man band. I think that's a lot of the problem I see in some of the younger generation is they're selfish enough to think that they can do it by themselves. And there's a lot of owner-operators and crew guys and motor guys that roll themselves into one, and I respect that. But to compete at the highest level, it definitely takes a team.
Right.
But, I've been very fortunate to work with some really nice team owners. Brian Dunlap and his dad, Mike, have a super nice car.
That BC39 is pretty cool, isn't it?
That's such a cool event.
Was that the first one you went to?
That was actually, yeah. So that was, another kind of facet of why I parted ways with the machine shop is I found myself trying to work when I should have been trying to race.
Right.
I had never been to the BC39, and now it's the third annual. Obviously, last year was whatever last year was, and but yeah, I've tried since the inaugural to go, and it was just I got to work because it's midweek or whatever. But that was such a cool event,
Just the atmosphere there is so cool.
Yeah.
I got to go to the second one, and just the atmosphere in the stands with the fans and just
I think if they added more stands to that deal, we'd keep it packed.
Absolutely.
It just
no
seems
doubt
like
in my mind.
the fans are so about how different it is because you look behind you and you got this speedway. And you're like, yeah, that's cool, but like this is awesome. Like,
Yeah.
And they race so hard. I mean, the track's really conducive to hard racing because it has such a little amount of grip, and it's really tight corners. So your drag racing guys, you're how much farther can you drive in on entry, and it's not like a big wound up, single groove or whatever. It's a good sized track. But man, it was tricky. I went there and kind of struggled. Just you unload with whatever. This is what we got.
Your idea,
yeah,
general
yeah.
idea, just
and then
your cliff notes.
Right. And it's, this frame's different than that frame, and this and this. So
then you guys fought some electrical problems.
yeah, just some unforeseen stuff. And part of that is they don't run 40, 50 races a night,
Right.
so it may be a few months before it goes to race.
Right.
And yeah, I put it together, and it just, even going down the road, honestly, midgets are so tough. Like
that was going to be my next thing. Is they're just so different than everything else, and they're so like you have to be on point.
Yeah.
On everything, or there's going to be the opportunity for a parts failure or a loose nut backing off or
Yeah.
something like that, just because they are just so weird, but they're so awesome.
Yeah.
In the same way. For you, some rapid fire questions here before we close out. Are you do you like the big track, or are you more of like a bull ring, high bank, let's get it on?
I like whatever track is conducive to racing. Like I go to I-30. Like I love that place. It's kind of bigger, but it races well, you know. And like Lawrenceburg is big, but it typically races pretty decent. I don't like it where it's big, strung out, single groove where it's impossible to get a run on a guy. Like I hate to bash it, but like Bubba Park, down in Ocala, Florida, it's really narrow. It's fast. It's a cool place, but it's just not conducive to racing. So I'm more of a small track guy, just because it's kind of an equalizer too. Like if you don't have the same level of motor or equipment or whatever, typically you can see somebody kind of hustle around and make something happen. Like especially like Port City,
Right. For you, are you a fan of changing shocks or stagger? Like, what's your first go-to change on a race car?
Oh, I feel like these days it's shocks first. Shocks and pressure are going to get you 90% of what you need. Usually, staggered, you can kind of bounce back and forth on, the radius of the corner never changed, so we don't need to change stagger. But, yeah, I'm typically a shocks and air pressure kind of guy.
Shocks and air pressure kind of guy. Rolling down the road, because you have gotten a lot of windshield time this year, what's your go-to snack and drink on the road?
Man, I don't know the name of there's these new pretzel sticks that I've been eating. They're like...
In a red box?
Yeah, dots. Yeah, dots.
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude, those are dangerous.
Those are so good. Oh my gosh.
But man, a nice like sugar-free 7-Up or like a sparkling water on set. Man, I can cruise forever.
Really?
Yeah, and obviously NOS energy drink every
Yeah.
chance I get. But yeah, just a nice like sugar-free stuff.
A nice sparkling water. He's like a highfalutin crew chief guy. In racing, you've seen a lot of people, like you said, over the course of all your years of being around it. You've seen a lot of people come. You've seen a lot of people come through the rankings and everything else. If Janky Bobby had to give a piece of advice to an up-and-coming driver that is wanting to break through and try and, let's face it, you can't get a free midget ride anymore. There's got to be some type of dollars traded out, or there's got to be something that you're bringing to the table to entice a team to pick you up. But as you see these kids trying to come through and find rides, what would be like a solid piece of advice that you could close out on?
I guess the best advice would be don't ever show up to the racetrack without your helmet bag. If you're an aspiring driver, you never know when somebody's going to get hurt. You never know when somebody's going to not show up or get pissed off and unbolt their seat. There's a reason why there's only 4 bolts in a seat. It makes it easier to change. So don't ever show up to a track thinking that you're not going to get an opportunity just because you don't have money. If you don't bring your helmet bag, you can't race anyway.
Right.
But as far as moving up through the ranks, try to be professional about it. Try to remember that there's eyes watching. Like, Flea Racing's got Port City weekly, so people are watching. Even if you think no one's watching, someone's watching.
That's a very good point. Bobby, anything else that we didn't cover that you feel like we need to cover?
Nah, man, just tell your drivers to bring AAA batteries and tear-offs and Keep the receiver plugged in.
AAA batteries, tear-offs, and don't forget who's watching, and keep on watching Haas Talks right here on Flow Racing.
Performance electronics, custom electronic solutions. From design to manufacturing, let us put your ideas in motion and become your company's full-service electronics manufacturing experts. Performance Electronics.